Pluto is stationary now. It's still in the first degree of Aquarius, and it's going to return into Capricorn in the middle of June, after having spent rather a short period of time in this first degree of Aquarius. So let's just see what that first degree means. An old Adobe mission to do with lasting values. Major works require group endeavour. Thus we know that they are emblematic of our times. Thousands of years ago, Stone Age man created features that were very difficult to make, Stonehenge for example, that were very clearly used for worship and ceremony, and they show that their aspect of life was very important indeed to them. Adobe missions similarly took great effort to place in the wild territory of California's early period, and collectively they took on the dual function of survival and worship. We might ask of ourselves, does our own set of values motivate us powerfully enough to create something sufficiently lasting that it outlives us? Now, on a personal level, this relates to whether you have developed your character to the point where you make a point, you make a difference. What you do lasts. It's important. On the level of Pluto, though, I think we have to consider something else. It's not really a personal experience, Pluto. It's a collective experience. It shapes world history. It only goes through the cycle of the zodiac 4 times in 1,000 years. So it's a very slow march through days and weeks and years and so on to create this historical period of time that we study as the rhythms and the general underlying direction of actually our species. So when Pluto changes sign and goes into the first degree of any sign, there's going to be a big movement occurring, and we're not going to really understand the implications of that. It's just too early. Now, we've been looking for the last few weeks to see if there are any early signs of what Pluto in Aquarius will be doing to us. And we've done a long video to study the expected outcomes of Pluto in Aquarius. And already we've had major evidence that AI, artificial intelligence, is going to be a bigger feature of our future than it has been of our past. And that might seem so simple a prediction, hardly worth making. But it's in our face now. The news has ChatGPT really grabbing our attention, and we have no idea where that's going. The idea that many jobs, 300 million jobs, might be lost because we can get a machine to do things that humans used to do. That general idea isn't new. That was what the Industrial Revolution was all about, that lots of jobs were taken over by machines, and those people, having no jobs in the country, looking after the fields, which were now looked after by machines largely, those people went into the city and were the cannon fodder of the Industrial Revolution, which could not have exploded and changed the face of the earth quite so quickly were it not for this movement of people. So we have the same thing now. ChatGPT is inevitably going to move people, some 300 million people looking for a job. Well, that will create another industry of some kind, another form of activity for the human species, because you can't just absorb 300 million people into the economy. And that will create greater imbalances between the haves than the have-nots, as high-tech countries become even higher tech with the use of robots and intelligent operators of human functions now. I, for example, became an accountant early on in my life in order that I would always be safe. I'd always have a piece of paper to say, give me a job. But that's not really true anymore. My occupation, accountancy, has almost become redundant. Not all of it, and that will be true for most professions, not all of it, but the basic bread and butter work can now easily be done by computers. Even to the point of creativity, story writing, writing plays, even making pictures. All of this material, which was definitely in the human domain, has now been moved into the domain of artificial intelligence. And this is just the beginning. We don't know what will happen when there are 20 years to study this phenomenon. We just have not the imagination. And I think we need to move our focus of attention away from what is going on outside to what's going on inside. Not only us individually, but also us collectively as a species. What's going on inside us? That question is very difficult to know, of course. How can you assess the world's population's inner thought processes? You can't. However, I've spoken to a few people, and there's this general sense that something finished and there's uncertainty about what's coming to replace it. And it's very vague indeed. It's to do with COVID, it's to do with the war in Ukraine, it's to do with Brexit on one geopolitical level. But there's something else going on. Life feels differently now to some people. It does to me. I don't really know the nature of reality in the same way as I used to. There's something changed. And it has to do with ChatGPT, and it has to do with Aquarius, and it has to do with this Pluto sense of like, oh dear, something big's happening and we can't control it. All of those things are really strong in my personal feelings and those of some other astrologers I've spoken to as well. Something is going on and it's mysterious. And it has to do with this ingress of Pluto into Aquarius. That itself is rather strange in that it goes in and then 6 weeks later goes back into Capricorn. Well, that's quite normal. But then next year, 2024, it's into Aquarius for most of that year. But then it still goes back into Capricorn again in the latter part of the year. And so we're not until like November 24 are we thoroughly into the Pluto and Aquarius era. And something happens the following year, which I think is worth mentioning now. And I think I'm going to be studying this rather more deeply before I talk more fully on the topic. Pluto is going out of bounds in 2025 in September, just for a very short period of time, something like 10 days. Now, when Pluto is out of bounds, major Plutonian events can occur. When Pluto changes sign, major Pluto events usually occur. So to have those two things so close to each other, that's a little bit disturbing. That's kind of the maximum extent of Pluto energy that you can possibly imagine, I think, when it's out of bounds and has just changed sign. And it's in Aquarius, so you're just wondering whether the age of Aquarius itself is going to be subject to the Pluto transit. So our concept, our consciousness of what is coming, the major shift, the like of which does not take place very quickly, very often. There's this kind of 2,160 year cycle that we're studying when we're talking about the age of Aquarius, and nobody really knows when it starts because there's just so many indicators. But Pluto going into Aquarius is an indicator of that, of some kind, and this combined with ChatGPT combined with the threat of geopolitics blowing up and being different to what we've always known, and the world is a totally different place on that geopolitical level now because of things to do with transportation, shipping, the supply lines, the demographics of various manufacturing countries. It all adds up to the fact that things have changed and we don't know what's new yet. So these are the issues that we're discussing, and Pluto is stationary, which means that there's a huge intensity of focus on exactly this point. And we can't anticipate the specifics, the details, the exact expression of what will happen, but we can work out some likely events. For example, if 300 million people wake up to the fact that their jobs are at risk, you can expect some behavior from them. And there is already considerable rioting going on around the world. It's more than usual. And you have a breakup of a major world power in the European Union. You can't just lose one country as important as England or Britain and not have implications. And those implications are really not known to us at all. The deal has not yet fully been struck until very recently about how to treat Ireland in all of this question. And that could erupt as well. We just don't know what's happening. It's a troubled time. And the essential issue here is the extent to which we move away from being how we have always been as human beings, and we move towards being agencies through which artificial intelligence can become stronger and stronger in their dominance of those people that can't escape the humdrum life. Because the people that get enslaved by artificial intelligence will be those that can't do anything else. The workforce, at 90% of the population in the middle that just want to continue to be. They hold the ballast. They slow change down. Well, these people are the ones that usually suffer when something goes wrong. And these are the people that will work out that you can't lose 300 million jobs overnight without there being severe disruption. And if that's coming, then the only survival technique available to you is to be one of the first to act. So I think that what we have to do is to understand how this will play out and what is our best strategy. And I think it comes down to this examination of the Adobe mission degree. These Adobe missions were two things simultaneously. They were churches, in a sense, that they introduced the Roman Catholic Church into that region. And they were fortresses. So you've got this spiritual and material polarity, shall we say, embraced within the one image. When Pluto is stationary in his first degree of Aquarius, this choice of guns or prayers comes to my mind. And I had this discussion some 2 or 3 years ago when COVID threatened the food supplies locally, and we started to get a little bit concerned about whether we ought to do something about this. And we were talking about whether we would buy a gun or not. And I was drawn into that conversation thinking that I might need to defend my property. And then I thought, what am I doing? I don't believe in guns. No, I won't have a gun. And if somebody wants to come and take what is mine, let them have it. I would rather they took my stuff than my dignity. I don't think you can own a gun and claim to be a person of dignity. Personally, I think these are the kind of issues that are up now. And these are Pluto issues. And these are new and we don't understand them. And we're having to think on our feet very quickly to get through this process. But we've got something significantly majorly different now to what we had very recently. We've got artificial intelligence at a level that it will be used to make an impact upon the geopolitics of our world that'll affect everyone. That's changed, and that's changed very quickly in the last few weeks. We've also got this idea that something significant needs to happen on the level of humanity's awakening. Those of us having great faith, we are aware that what we have been calling Armageddon or the apocalypse, another way of calling that would be the Great Awakening. That would be a better name rather than Armageddon, the Great Awakening. Because what's happening is that our species is moving to a new consciousness. Some of us will move to a new dimension of consciousness. Others will continue to manage the world the way they want it to be managed, and there'll be some kind of separation. I have to believe in that. I do believe in that, and I believed in that most of my adult life. And I think it's now not a very large period of time anyway. How do I know? How does anybody know? We don't know, and it's not yet knowable. But I think what is happening, and I feel what is happening, is that we're moving towards that shift point, the Great Awakening. And some won't want to awaken. That's their choice. They want to continue playing this silly game that the world seems to like playing. Let them play. That will be possible somehow. Whereas those of us that are saying, look, enough. Guns are wrong. Get rid of them. You know? Starving people. It's wrong. Feed them. Letting people die for want of medical care is wrong. Let's deal with that. You know, these are really obvious to any person with a heart. So why isn't it happening? And the answer is that the people in power don't use that particular organ of sensitivity. And they make their decisions based on money and power. And it's the wrong people in government. And they have to go. Now, I don't like guns and rebellions and the normal ways of getting rid of governments. So what is there left? Well, what is there left is prayer. We have to pray now, much more clearly. And we have to do it. And we have to do it collectively if possible. And I think the best way for us now to enact this imperative is to start initiating projects of light. And if you haven't done that yet, find somebody to do it with. Get involved with other people who are working towards the light. That engages us in a different way. The meditation is good, prayer is good, but working together when you are also meditating and praying with that group of people, that's better.